Terrans back in the day when Apollo was a kid and I was showing him off on the MLG community stream 7 years ago. That was on like MLG stream 2 or something, so obscure, not used anymore. And then I wasn't doing a ton of consistent gigs, so I didn't really get to show Apollo off that much. But I did use him as downtime, and that's how he's gotten to love the camera so much. That's why he's a little attention hog. Because that was his first role. Oh, I know who Aqueron is. In the bottom right, as the red Terran, it is Aqueron. In the top left, as the blue Terran, it is Marshalt. Actually, it's uThermal. I'm not sure what this account name is, because it's also on Clan C, WCSC, so these are big question marks, I don't know. Anyways, so as Borsty said in the chat, Aqueron is a Spanish Terran player, obviously pretty good, just by the fact he's facing uThermal. He casts him, occasionally in the WCS qualifiers, and he gets like a decent way through, but really, obviously struggles to actually make it to the Challenger, which is why many of you probably haven't heard of him. But I believe he is the best Spanish player right now. So back in the day, we had Vortex and Lucifron, but unless I'm forgetting someone, which is possible, Aqueron's the only one still making waves for the actual Spanish, like from Spain community. Yeah. I'm like terrified I'm forgetting someone right now, but I'm pretty sure that's true. So, at the very least, he is the best Spanish Terran player. I can say that much. And just kind of in general, it's always nice, personally, to see these these non-Korean Terrans pop up. Not just because I'm Terran, and more Terran equals more Terran games I get to cast, and I like TVT and all that, but also because that is just historically how StarCraft 2 has worked. Like, the non-Koreans aren't as good. They're not making it deeper into the tournaments, especially back in the day. Or they're getting so, discouraged by these results, or by their lack of peers, that they just stop playing. They don't ever really rise to the occasion. And no one can really blame them. Which is why I also don't really ever blame the foreigner Terrans who hate it when people compare them to Korean Terrans. This one Terran guy beat all these other Protoss guys, so obviously Terran's fine, and then the guy who's in Europe, like uThermal, is like sitting there going like, I can't be Maru, I'm sorry. But anyways, that's a whole nother side thing. Before people are like, well, the Protoss players say that too. I can't be Hero, I can't be Zest. Yeah. But there's no denying that historically, Terrans of the non-Koreans have struggled. And I'm sure someone can go ahead and do a dissertation on why that is. Something Broodland Infestors, something Europe Zerg, something Terran Best Brace, blah, blah, blah. But that'll be someone else's job. Right now, I'm supposed to be casting a TVT, which has been a little passive. But both players actually ramping up units that can be quite dangerous. So uThermal with the high ground would do okay initially, but would probably get overwhelmed unless his grenades are just that much better. So appropriately running back up to the high ground, further high ground, and waiting for those Marines. Also, the option to pull even just a couple of SCVs is the safest way to go. If uThermal had skipped any of these things, his own 2 Hellions, his own 2 Reapers, things would have been actually really dangerous. Just the one addition of an extra Hellion or an extra Reaper can be a big deal. But it is a temporary weak spot. Very temporary weak spot. Now you can see uThermal actually bringing it back here with his medevac drop. Aqueron not expecting that whatsoever. Follow-up Cyclone? Absolutely. Exactly what he did. A Raven being produced? Absolutely. That's what he's doing. But uThermal actually changing things up just a tiny little bit there. Getting the tank, getting the medevac, providing him the mobility that he just showcased right there, while also still getting to the the most important unit ever in TVT as of 2018, probably, the Raven. It's actually cemented itself into a TVT that you can't really skip it. Even if you only get one, but you'll probably get 2. It's too important. And in some cases, if you are facing someone who has just gone 1 Rax expand, 111, tank production, 2 Raven, 2 Vikings at a time, tank push. If you're facing that stock standard bread and butter build, pushing off your second Raven or your first Raven, or not even getting a Raven, God forbid, can actually be extremely dangerous. But you know, that's the risk he took, and uThermal got a bit of a reward. He bullied Aqueron back. He has the map control. He has Medevac waiting to dip in and do something, but he figures there's something waiting for him, so he's not. He's got units surrounding here. Hellions won't do very much. Reapers won't do very much. Yo, thank you, In Control, for that huge host. I was gonna say I look forward to seeing you this weekend, but actually you're heading off to the Netherlands on Sunday, so enjoy that. And welcome everyone from Chat Utopia. Casting subscriber replays. This was submitted by Borsty, but it's uThermal versus Aqueron, a TVT that so far has been pretty even. Third base to third base, just going over the ways that these guys opened and how it could have been worse, could have been better, but actually turned out to be pretty much even. uThermal with a slight lead in those workers, but a little behind in the orbital. He's actually I was gonna say a lot behind in the stim, and then I was gonna be like, wait, is he even getting stim? And the answer is no, he's not. Double armory start up here. If he had wanted to go for stim, he would have had it maybe a bit later than Aqueron, but you would have seen this tech lab running. So no, it's gonna be mech from uThermal. He does seem to be enjoying mech in all matchups lately. The attempt to destroy the medevac is unfortunately not exactly worth it. So by that was such a weird little thing. By interference matrixing the medevac, you not only stop the Marines from dropping out and like, you know, trying to ward away your air units here, you also stop the boost. But Vikings aren't faster than medevacs. I think they're the same speed, like exactly, when they're not boosted. So it just turned into the longest unimportant chase scene ever. Okay, anyways. Whose scan is that? That was uThermal's scan, actually. Scanning the main base. They both were unsure as to what their compositions were, but this confirms for uThermal, he's up against Bio. And for Aqueron, he actually still needs to see what uThermal's doing, but as I was saying before that awkward little chase there, uThermal's doing mech in a lot of matchups. So it's not too surprising to do it in TVT, even though to me uThermal is more of a bio player than anything else, just because of what he's known for, his strengths for multitasking and harassment. But it does seem like when he latches on to a new style, he does really push it hard, which is not a bad thing, but it does seem like lately it's been more about that mech play, so certainly a bit more passive, but also certainly pretty good for this map. Thunderbird has that high ground third, so while there's, you know, a lot of room to maneuver when you're on the high ground, the whole point is that you're not supposed to let them onto the high ground. And if you can get the 3 bases, you can start affording a bit of static defense. So as a mech player, it's exactly what uThermal did. He got 3 CC pretty swiftly. So did Aqueron, but it benefits the mech player more to not have anything done to them in the mid game, right? So Aqueron as a bio player is actually the one that's kind of forced to choose. Do I see that he's getting to 3 base and try and do something about it? Can I do something about it? Or do I see he's doing that and try and get past that, actually move to a 4th base and a 5th base? Because you're supposed to have more bases, more upgrades, and more economy to work with to choose about that transition later on into Vikings or not. Which Aqueron is unfortunately right now, I would say, just falling behind because he's not doing anything. So it's painting a grim picture when literally nothing has happened in this game, but that's kind of how mech is going to work. Love the new RP show you guys are doing. Thank you, old son. Is it pronounced like Sean with a Z? Oh, that's a very good point, Boise. You made before the host came in. So anyways, so why do I think this is already going poorly for the Red Terran here? Mech is, simply put, this is actually how it's designed, and it's not something you can really gripe about because you don't. It's just, it's design, is that it's weak in the early and mid game, and then it's strong in the late game. The conundrum is that when you have TVT, actually often, I would say, amongst good players, going to 3 bases without much to say or to do about it, you get to this potential where, like, some people are going to take advantage of that with mech. And if they take advantage of it with mech, they get to this late game with a bunch of stack defense. They even skip tank rounds and factory production for a little while to consistently produce air so they can't be sideswiped for the air transition. You're going to get games that look boring and one-sided even though nothing really happens. But the final battle looks kind of lame. So I'm a little worried about that. I'm thinking about, you know, the game that Roddy described about how, you know, Seoul just like literally went crazy and went like 6cc on location, mass economy, and still couldn't defeat uThermal. And I'm hoping that just isn't the case. I'm really hoping that Aqueron has something a little bit more special in mind here, but I don't feel so good about it. uThermal is down in upgrades, but with, again, that theoretically, not even theoretically, like literally stronger army, he should be fine. He's also got an anti-armor missile just waiting to pop off if the Marines looked for a concave. That would take down any upgrade disadvantage and then some. But against Ditto, the Raven of Aqueron looking for the interference matrix. Grab all 4 of the forward tanks. Actually going for auto turrets here means that there's no anti-armor missile, but here come more tank shots from the bottom side as well as Muslim Hellions from the west side. And uThermal does win the air war while that was happening, so that might have looked initially okay for our Red Terran, and actually was not. In the end there, he got 4 tanks and both Ravens of his opponents, but he traded out his own as well as all of his Vikings that he was very slowly accumulating. So he set back down to 0, and now is the choice of like, do I try and go back into Vikings or what? And because uThermal can, uThermal is already preparing for the worst, which is, again, that air transition. He's just won the Viking War, so he really shouldn't be afraid. There's actually no reason not to add in a couple of Thors. Thors are still big, chunky boys that can take a lot of damage, even if their actual output versus bio isn't that impressive, because they're single target and all that. But they will stop you, again, from just ever having to worry about that late game air. And as long as you don't get concaved on, like a really supreme concave surrounds, then only a certain number of tanks are really necessary to deal with the bio. Aqueron not doing any harassment is getting harassed. Couple of Hellbat drops to some damage, but mostly are pulling his army out of position, and that's the exact thing that uThermal wanted. He gets his entire mech army across the map without Aqueron saying anything about it. He's got his own Liberators here to stop the tank front of Aqueron. It was one thing he was hoping would stop any push from his opponents. But his opponents he's on the thing that usually the bio player wants to be on, which is too many Vikings and Liberators popping out. It's actually the mech player that's got that, working against the mech units of the bio player. So now he's got to go down a ramp. Or not. Okay, that's probably the better decision. To get to that army. So we'll see if this is going to be a drop or an attempted concave. Kind of seems like he's going to drop on top of that plateau. I'm not sure. Nope, he's still going forward, but oh no, the Thors. Oh no. Okay, they're not target firing the medevacs, so dropping the units works out. They grab 2 Thors, not too shabby. They also see that that's rallying, right? So that must mean that there's not a lot at home to stop this drop from actually doing damage. That's exactly the case. uThermal, realizing his mistake as well, has a couple of tanks on his 3rd base ready to defend, but nothing on the high ground leading up to his production. Thor's instantly taken out here. Easy peasy. uThermal actually is still paying attention to the front lines, but has left a tiny portion of his army, all things considered, as his rally has been halted. His Vikings even coming over and getting a kill here, but are taking out the medevacs. But Aqueron just doesn't have quite enough to break down a ramp, I guess, or doesn't think that he can. He might have actually been able to, but he is focusing entirely on this attack, and he is ripping through the main base SCVs, now going after the upgrades, which were so close to finishing. No, they did not. That was +3 attack is not done for uThermal, but looks like he's gonna be able to finish up that +3 armor at the very least, which, you know, we're still talking about Vikings, so that will affect every unit that uThermal has. Still an important upgrade to keep. Finally, we have that break from Aqueron coming down the ramp. As I said, I thought he could break it, but it's not too surprising he took so long to do it. And he didn't use his tanks to help out, but still leaving with a good chunk of bio, taking out the rest of the Vikings. uThermal having to split his army against that was exactly what Aqueron wanted. This is what you're gonna do actually break that tank line of the mech player because their army's better. But uThermal, while that was a bit of chaos right there, wasn't slacking in any other regard. He's got a planetary up towards the bottom left. He's got extra command centers as well. Both, he has an extra orbital, he has an extra command center that could go over to the right side. Just mine this out a little bit. Easy access. And he knows that Aqueron is still only on 4 bases himself. Well, actually he doesn't know that, but he's about to confirm it. So no sneaky base taken over here as his Hellions get shift-clicked around to scout that out. These ones as well going to the top side. Something's got to do damage is what, you know, uThermal's hoping for, but because Thunderbird is Thunderbird, only one access path to the initial 3 bases means that maybe it won't be a ton of damage. Come on, units, come on. But maybe this base would get shot at a little bit. And this base actually being found out with the SCV transfer is not too bad, but hold on here. What happened? Where are all the tanks? uThermal, not even thinking about being attacked. He's got 1 tank siege, a 2nd tank on siege, but that was it. That was his only tank count. Otherwise, the tanks are just popping out here. I mean, he did lose some production in the main base and had rebuilt it as it was happening, but very late to the tank production. You need at least 6, I would say, to hold a line. And he was just simply not prepared. Production is going to have to be lifted and moved over. This base is going to be denied and perhaps will die. And of course, uThermal just realized that his opponent's taking another base, so he's got to start worrying about his base count. He no longer has another mistake to make. In fact, that mistake right there might have been one too many. Liberators are on the way to help break the line. Actually, a couple already here. Darn it. I say a couple, literally 1. One thing Aqueron has not shown yet is his Viking counts, and good on him. He's at 5 to 11, so he needs to wait a little bit longer. Very, very low Marine count means Liberator is doing a fine enough job. By the way, like, uThermal got Liberator range quite a while ago, so he's been taking advantage of that to the fullest. A couple of tanks who siege up on this base. Now, Master Pair will hold against this, and will have to be a Master Pair because the bio is stopping SCVs from mining anyways. But uThermal actually can't get anything down there. He would send a couple of Liberators, but he's currently trying to break this army. Mechanical Vikings in the ground against Mechanical is not too shabby. But Aqueron is already thinking of evacuating anyways, so gets out of there with most of his army. He's killed a ton of SCVs. Even though this drop will be cleaned up and doesn't get the planetary, he's still cut that worker size down quite a bit. Actually, very even on the workers lost, but uThermal is down to 45 SCVs, barely not grabbing that last medevac. Viking pops out and takes care of it. And he will finally deal with the rest of the bio, but that was a ton of time for Aqueron to get his own macro up and running and to reset the game, the momentum especially. Bio players need to be out on that map actually controlling it, and that's what Aqueron did there. But now it's time for uThermal to rebuke. He's got a decent army, but without that higher tank count, still only at 3. It's not quite the same. Actually, it's 4. But it's still not quite the same. And now he has a different type of siege unit that he has to be careful about using, those Liberators. They fly a little too far forward, they get caught in the weird pathing of Thunderbird without the rest of their army, and that is easy pickoffs for Aqueron's army. But if he can actually slowly siege up here, Aqueron's going to have a bit of trouble dealing with this. Currently, the Viking count is in favor of Aqueron, though, and I don't think uThermal will realize this. He only has 1 Thor? No, he has 3 Thors, actually. No, 2 Thors. 2 Thors helping out, but the AI is a bit derpy. They get drawn forward. And simply put, they couldn't help the Liberators, which are target fired, but because the Liberators are target fired, we do have a temporary lead for uThermal and the Vikings. Actually, these... Oh, whoa. Okay, Aqueron should not have tangoed there. I guess he wanted to make sure that last Liberator didn't get any shots off, but that lost him what was still an okay number, and he could have repaired him as well, right? He has the defender's advantage at this point, so he's pumping out 4 at a time. He would have eventually have caught back up, but both of them... Maybe some micro mistakes there, taking each other very seriously, constantly thinking about that next problem that they could face, and uThermal just backs off, so it's not worth sticking around there. These Hellions, I guess, are going to go for a run-by. I'm surprised it was all of them, but they accidentally find a big drop to the south, which is very important. He needs this base to be up and running, and actually needs to get the gas back up, too. Vikings find the medevacs first. An attempt to snipe a couple of the Vikings down, but it's ultimately a good opportunity for uThermal cleaning that up. Topside, a very, very tiny drop that would have dealt with 2 tanks anyways, so probably wouldn't do a whole lot. Does find the barracks, but uThermal is already at 8 factories. He doesn't really need too many more, and 4 starports as well, so he's fine on production. Oh, you guys are talking it. Oh. You know, I asked In Control one very important question about the pizza thing. Doesn't answer, but as soon as I talk about sexy announcing, I used to bring that up. Another push forward here from uThermal. Very strong position on Thunderboard in any matchup, really. Liberators being a huge problem. That tank count has grown to 14, I believe 12 on the front line, so Bio ain't gonna cut it. He's now up to that air war, which Aqueron might be winning. The Thor's in the ground, still doing their best to help out, so he's not actually winning it. One Thor caught in the front, takes a bit of pepper from the tank, but still helping out where it matters most. Tearing down those Vikings in the single target mode. Very effective tool there. That's why uThermal was so insistent about getting them as part of his army, but he has had to back away a little bit on that Thor production after that very awkward, almost base tradey, like a base for a base thing that happens. He's gonna lose that last Thor on the front line. He's only running one more. Perhaps an opportunity for the Vikings to come forward. Aqueron, again, with the defense advantage, just has more to work with more immediately, but the planetary goes down. The Raven wasn't quite ready to go with whatever he wanted to shoot out there, and he decides not to take the air fight. The Raven can be very important. It can actually take out 2, even 3 Vikings out of the equation, and I'd say that might be even better than an anti-armor missile, which is a little awkward in those Viking to Viking wars. Vikings do have some serious overkill, so whenever I see an anti-armor missile go down, it looks amazing, but then you still see the guy who had more Vikings win, and you're like, oh, okay. But not important right now, maybe later. Command Center goes down as Aqueron had so much of his army in another position, that's why he couldn't defend here. Not only not defending one planetary, but then losing another one. I don't know if it was actually worth it, but he did kill 2 planetaries of his own, so... Literal base trades going down here. uThermal finding this topside base was not a planetary, but wouldn't have been an issue even if it was. All the SCVs will die as well. Both of them set down to sub 50 SCVs, but uThermal is looking a little bit better. Actually, a lot better. As these SCVs get roasty toasty, the command center has no way to escape. That's a dead one. And Aqueron is down to 3 orbitals, whereas uThermal is... actually, that's the fresh one from such a long time ago. So he's 3 orbitals plus a potential planetary. Hellions actually taking on a bio army. A decent amount of Marauders, but most of those bodies that are inflamed right now, I believe we're Marines. And then eventually the Marauders start going down, because there's enough Blue Flame Hellions. There's enough. They will kill Marauders, I guess. Much to the Marauder's shame, I guess. I think that's how it would go down. I think uThermal has weathered the storm. It's been scrappy. Aqueron's mass drops, every time he's done 4 medevac drops, they've done something that can help him out considerably. This last round killing 2 planetaries was a big deal, but then he lost 3 of his own bases, so not an even trade. But Aqueron still has the army supply, and he still has the chance to catch uThermal not sieged. In which case, he should take a decent fight. He's gonna go ahead and stop the army from coming up to defend the space. No planetary either. Any kills at this point would have been helpful, but no planetaries to repair this. He's trying to escape with their lives. Some of them will, but the would-be planetary goes down, and the command center here could be the next target. Actually, the minerals aren't even mined out. They couldn't be. But these 2 tanks shouldn't be underestimated. uThermal has more army, more tanks defending the actual ramp here, but there's Liberators and Vikings. Okay, goodbye, SCVs. You're dead. Aqueron down to 7 SCVs, but with now a 30 army supply. He's got the Liberators. He's sieging up here. He's got the Liberator range, and he is bullying uThermal's army back. uThermal at 11 Vikings to 14. But a Raven as well. The Raven does cast an anti-armor missile, but we have 2 Thors helping a considerable amount. They gotta target fire those Liberators before it's too late, but they're not doing it. They actually try to escape alongside the tanks that are drawing back. And a couple pod shots off on the Vikings that aren't being controlled correctly, but they can't actually reach those Liberators, and that's still a problem. But every time one unsieges, that's when he can get on top of them. The tanks aren't covering them either, and even if they were, it takes quite a few tank shots to actually kill the Thors. The Thors take care of those Vikings instantly with the tanks. I could see where Aqueron's head was at, but that wasn't a good idea. 2 tanks very weak, go down instantly. A drop helping out here, but there's 2 more tanks on the top side. Those 2 tanks didn't help very much at all in this entire game. Helping a decent bit there, and the Hellions come back from their roasty toasty adventures to clean everything up again. Marauders dying to Hellions. How shameful that must be, but it happens. 21 workers to 7. These SCVs, I was wondering what was over there. It was the SCVs that survived are now able to get back to mining, including the gases which weren't even killed. Usually not something you really have to point out here, but when they're both down below 200 minerals, 2 gas geysers is actually pretty big. But then so are Hellions. They try and get some good lineups and get a lot of the army low, but only a portion of it killed. I'm gonna go ahead and skip on over those minerals to save whatever remaining SCVs there are. It's not SCVs, it's mules. Grab a couple of Marines for a couple of Hellions. Wow, this game gets really scrappy. Well then, Aqueron still has 3 orbitals. So does uThermal? No, uThermal, no he does, okay. Maybe that was headed towards the 4th and then saw the army, so it stopped. So 3 to 3 orbitals. Bigger army for Aqueron because you can replace it faster, right? Typical bio thing, but a stronger army for uThermal if it's in the right position. Orbital is unfortunately set down at the wrong time. Hellions want to save it, but it's probably too late. And it indeed was. Thermal set down to 2 orbitals for lack of scouting. He's perusing around with Hellions, however, looking for whatever SCVs are there to kill. He's going to find the SCVs, plus a couple of mules that were mostly out of juice anyways. But still. Army supply now in favor of uThermal. This is not a planetary, and Aqueron's headed towards it. Also, using the advantage of the medevacs, very important now that there are very few Vikings, but uThermal not giving up on that Viking production yet. It's not just about stopping the medevacs from flying around or retreating, it's also about stopping them healing the army, just straight up. It's also about making sure that they don't drop on top of tanks, for instance, in any of the locations that he just sets a couple of tanks down. That's an opportunity for them to be dropped on. You can't really afford missile turrets. Vikings would be the best option here because they can also land on the ground. And obviously, eventually they can attack. Stack defense cannot, but I'm not sure uThermal's thinking about moving away. He's got the Hellions looking around, making sure that his opponent doesn't suddenly rebuild with 4 orbitals. But as far as pushing goes, it would be in his worst interest to push. Aqueron's gonna have a lot of trouble defending these outlying bases. At this point, usually even like a bunker would be helpful, but he can't even afford one. The last few SCVs are gonna go down here. I don't know where these 2 are. One. The last remaining SCV. Aqueron is going for the attack, but we do have a sieged up tank and a couple of Hellions here. Here comes the rest of the Hellions. So many Hellions, but it's good enough against what Aqueron is showing. And that is going to be game. Damn. What a TVT that was.